Okay. So, first of all, welcome to the Roundtable, Global Constitutionalism and Legal Framework for Social Media, jointly hosted by Alterbridge, Sector 3 and Digital Democracy Centre. My name is Nina Shengelia, and it's an honor for me to be moderating this very high-level roundtable. Virtual world coexists alongside real world, and global constitutionalism must respond to the challenges of digital world. Social relations have certainly become dense and intense with its digitization. Social media is taking gigantic dimension at a fast pace. According to Digital 2020 report, Facebook, with its over 2.5 billion users, is the biggest state in the world. With the rise of social media, we see new kinds of risks. Every day we witness numerous violations of human rights on social media. We see hate speech, defamation, violation of human dignity, dissemination of personal data, invasion of our right to privacy, as well as other challenges. Facebook has deleted 20.5 million items of hate speech in the months of April to June 2020. Hate speech has risen 5 times on Facebook over the past year. These figures go to show the power of social media and its influence globally. Digital literacy seems to be the answer when it comes to overcoming challenging environments of the digital world. Some leading democratic states, such as Germany and France, have employed methods of regulation when it comes to hate speech and disinformation in pre-election periods. Facebook is also taking measures for self-regulation, which is why it has created an oversight board, which started functioning before US presidential elections. Multi-level constitutionalism has been proposed as a means of providing a normative theory for the architecture of constitutional structure to enhance level of democratic legitimacy at national, supranational, and global levels. Today, our roundtable will discuss global constitutionalism and legal framework for social media, local and international perspective. Now it's time to introduce our speakers. To deliver global perspective, speak about global constitutionalism and legitimacy source for social media platforms. We are honored to have a world-leading scholar and research director at Humboldt Institute for Internet and Society, Professor Ingold Pernis, as our first speaker. As Georgia's strategic partner and a very dear friend, Israel plays a key role in supporting Georgia and digital literacy. To speak about this, we are honored to have Mr. Kuriel Yifta as our speaker on the panel, who's the head of Digital Diplomacy Department at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel. A lot of disinformation and fake news spreads through COVID-19, which serves diminishing trust towards state institutions. Namely, fake news about Lugar Lab is a good example. To speak about damaging effects of disinformation, we have a leading Georgian professor, Mr. Zaza Totniashvili, as our third speaker. So welcome again, and thank you very much for finding time, because I know how busy you are. So thank you very much for finding time to take part in this roundtable. So moving on to our first speaker, Professor Pernis, developing upon Jürgen Habermas's concept of post-national constellation. In your previous works and your book, you speak about the term digital constellation. Could you please explain in a bit more detail what this concept is trying to capture?
First, I have to put the mic on. So first of all, I thank you very much for the honor you give to me to allow me speaking on a subject which is very close to my heart and which moves myself since many years. As you know, I'm not so much specialist of international law, but more of European law, and I specialize there in European law on European constitutional law. And when I started talking about European constitutional law, people looked at me, what is this? Saying Europe is not a state. And I said, yes, but look at the treaties, what they are doing. They establish a government, structures of legislation, of executive powers, of judicial powers, etc. That's exactly what constitutions really do. And the law of the EU applies it directly to people, and people have obligations under EU law and have rights under EU law. And so that's why I developed a little bit more what that could mean. Now, that's not the digital constellation, but working on this issue brought me to Jürgen Habermas' works, and he developed this notion of post-national constellation, which I understand as a perspective on the development of political structures in the world at the global level. So to say we are not past the stage of what he calls the historical constellation. And I would call the historical constellation, that's something like the Westphalian model. The Westphalian model, which is the international, or let's say, the structures, the world is organized through states, and states are governed by their kings and queens and whatever at the time in the 16th century, 17th century. And the Westphalian peace was sort of establishing this order, which is based on a sovereign national state. Is it democratic or not democratic? At that period, it was not the question. But these sovereign states, which are sort of an analogy to the private person who has the freedom, and these private persons interact to each other, and the states interact like private people, and they are feeling that they are free. Liberalism is the concept, and every state could do what they wanted to. So I call this the Westphalian constellation, which is based on this idea of national self-determination, which still is written into the UN Charter as a basic principle. Self-determination of peoples or states, in fact, is the concept. And Habermas understood, I think rightly, that this model doesn't work so much anymore because we have the globalization with an effect which means that people cannot determine themselves anymore the way it was conceptualized in the Westphalian time. So he said the post-national constellation is a constellation in which even within the state, democracy is a limited concept. It changed into a concept which does not work entirely, because as far as we have external effects of our internal policies, we are subject to influences and to policies of other countries around our country or all over the world, which mean we determine ourselves, and we believe and like to believe that we determine ourselves and our fate nationally through democratic, hopefully democratic processes. But finally, very important parts of what we would need to influence and determine as well democratically is out of the reach of our politics, of our state power. One example, the most recent one, is pandemia. We cannot govern pandemia on ourselves in each country. We cannot govern climate change. We cannot govern the financial markets. We cannot govern trade. WTO is only an attempt which is very, very fragile and doesn't work totally to satisfaction. So we are dependent on each other. And in fact, there are common goods, common objectives, and common challenges, global challenges, which need, as I see, and as already Habermas has seen, which needs global answers, global replies, global policies. But how to implement global policies? So that's where the post-national constellation, as described by Jürgen Habermas, which I like very much and I find very convincing, is reaching to its limits because he proposes we should add to the UN system, to the General Assembly of the United Nations, an assembly which is a global parliament. And others also argue this way, global parliament to produce global decisions, at least regarding security and human rights. But how should that work? Is the global parliament more democratic? How many members of global parliament should there be? Would it be workable? Would it be functioning? I have lots of questions. So there was a sort of deadlock and a question how to organize what Habermas rightly thinks is necessary. So, and now comes in the digital revolution, which in my view implies enormous challenges, new challenges, and opportunities. So first, let me talk about challenges, how to organize the internet, and you all know about ICANN and all the sort of partly private, partly public structures of internet governance. Yes, it works so far, but there are many, many lacunae, many things which do not work in the present system, how the internet is organized. There are, as Nina already has pointed out, the questions of privacy, of the protection of human rights, lots of questions regarding security. Cybersecurity is a big problem. And cybersecurity is not only a problem anymore which touches the internet as such, but as we apply all the IT now to almost all the systems for provision of electricity, of water, of telecommunications, power stations, nuclear power stations, all that is organized, is managed now through internet. And you imagine what it means if there is an attack on a cyber area to a power station or to the network of electricity, etc. That can easily lead to a total breakdown of this. And a breakdown of electricity, we have thought out here in Germany at least, would mean if it's 1 or 2 days, we can survive. If it's a week, everything needs electricity, so we would have a big, big problem. And if it's more than 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it could lead to a catastrophe. So it's very fragile and tangible, sensitive, this question. So we have new challenges. We have brought in, we have created ourselves through the use of the internet. So the digitization is a wonderful thing because we can have the Zoom conference, okay? But it has also the dark side, which is the challenge of security, of privacy, and other issues. So, and I think all the opportunities now to talk about this are to be balanced with the risks which are created by the use of the internet. I think Zoom does not create too many risks except for our privacy and who follows and writes down and knows what we are now talking about. Who knows? I don't know. I don't care, because I hope that the ideas are spread so far in the world so that everybody can hear and listen to this and is hopefully convinced. But there are other problems. Now, digital constellation, in my view, is one step further from what Habermas has called the post-national constellation. It's the same thing, but more intense and in a new dimension for some reasons. It is offering, that's my claim, opportunities and possibilities to develop processes of democratically legitimate decision-making at the global level. Because we have now a sort of, it's just keywords, some items I can explain. It's a bit short and simplified, but we have a global, potentially at least global public sphere. Don't talk about China now and some Arabic Islamic countries, but basically there is a possibility for a global public sphere. We can read the newspapers of Georgia, if I understood the language. We can, but Google Translate and other programs help me to translate and understand. We can get from our friends on social networks, through WhatsApp or any kind of information, we can get on time, real-time information on what happens all over the world. The Arabic Spring movement is an example which failed at the end in some way, but which shows us that the information infrastructure now allows us to have real-time information, real-time video, real-time pictures on what happens in all the countries. Of course, the internet also offers us, each of us, the possibility to write emails or give reports on what happens in our country to people in other countries. Of course, we can send fake news or real news from our country to the Americans. We can even participate in the public debate before the American elections. Why? Because what the Americans are doing is so important for us. Frankly, under conditions of democracy, to exaggerate a little bit, all of us, because the Americans are so important actors in the world, all of us should participate in the American presidential elections. They don't like the idea, of course, the Americans, but in some way it does concern us. And if decisions, political decisions, affect us, we should participate. That's democracy. That's self-determination. Now, we do not want to involve in American politics, but we do want, and that's what my claim would be, in the digital constellation, we do want to produce for common challenges, common, relevant, effective answers on policies together at the global level. And what I claim is, with the new conditions of the internet, we can spell out in the discussion more and more how that could work and find out, we do need common decision-making, common rules. So to give an answer to these challenges as far as they concern all of us the same way, more or less the same way. That's climate change, a first important example. And I claim that international law and the instruments we have actually in our hands is not working sufficiently, is not doing what it promises to do. We need more. We do not need to set aside international law, but based on international law, we need to develop further instruments to have a better reply to these challenges. And that's what I would suggest is the subject of this discussion on multi-level constitutionalism, which learns from the model of the EU and which uses the new opportunities and technologies of the digital revolution, so to construct a new world order, which is based on the states, based on supranational organization with the EU, but it adds the global level as a level of common action, common responsibility of all the citizens, which in the words of Jürgen Habermas then are considering and establishing or defining themselves as global citizens.
Yeah.
So far, to summarize, digital constellation is some sort of new framework, new conditions, tries to give an expression to the new conditions, which both include very important new challenges, but very important new opportunities for constructing a democratic global system. Okay, so far.
Thank you so much. That was really, really interesting for me to listen to, because obviously it's a new topic, as you mentioned. It's sort of gained significance in the last several years due to development of the infrastructure of internet. So we need to think about things like, how is the shared sovereignty, how is the sovereignty going to be shared at different sort of levels, starting from local to global, and what is the legal framework, and where does the legitimacy come from? I mean, that is the big question. And I'm very much fascinated by the fact that we are indeed global citizens. And even though, the US presidential elections did not concern me directly, I sort of felt like part of the process because of the world that we live in. So it's really fascinating to hear your development and your digital angle to Jürgen Habermas's theory, and how you view this to be sort of potential for global constitutionalism in future, and how it should be really adapted, and how it's the public space. So thank you so much for this. And I think you partially sort of touched upon the second question that I had for you, which was again about legitimacy. I mean, what do you see as a source of legitimacy for new infrastructure for a global digital democracy when it comes to social media platforms? And I appreciate you partially sort of touched upon this, but if you want to sort of share any additional thoughts, it would be a pleasure for us to listen to you on this subject. So legitimacy and social media platforms, because obviously one of the biggest criticisms is the fact that, I mean, they're certainly not elected. They claim to have some sort of accountability, and there are some efforts that we see, with the self-regulation oversight board that Eduardo Galesta is so closely involved with. And we also see things like EU disinformation code. We see external regulations from Germany and France, NETDZG. I always get the abbreviation wrong, but the Network Enforcement Act, etc. But, overall, we still have a serious deficit of accountability on all fronts. It's certainly not enough. And everyone is talking about reforming the 230 Decency Act, because it just provides a blanket immunity for the platforms. And sometimes it seems to be a suggestion that if you're not happy, just leave Facebook or leave Twitter, and it's your choice to give them control over your personal data. But that's not the answer, because in a contemporary world, we need to be on these social media platforms, and we need to have them, because that's the way it works from now on. So what are your thoughts on this subject, I wonder?
Yeah, thank you. It's a very tricky question. To make it very simple and utopic in some way, simultaneously, my answer provisionally would be that's exactly one of the issues where we need regulation. This incredible power of the platforms, of the internet platforms, which we would not assess sufficiently if we would not include to understand that they have a set of information and information of power, information which is beyond, I think, the information any state government has. So they are really powerful actors, and they are different. And this power is exactly what you say. So based on the dependency of us, of each of us, on participation, some dependency on participation in Facebook or so. I know, of course, many people just can live without Facebook, to be frank, and can live without WhatsApp and without even Google search. You can live without this. But many people believe that they cannot live it. Without that form because it is so practical and so easy to choose the platform, to choose Facebook as an instrument, even not for getting access to other pages. You do it through Facebook now or through Google, and that's incredible. I could do this directly, but it's easier if I do it through Facebook, and immediately Facebook knows that I'm in the other website, etc. So it is constructed in such an intelligent way that we have to be a little bit afraid of this. And that this is a power which for the time being is not really abused. But of course, if the American FBI or CIA has access and can force these companies to give them the information they have, then we have already a big problem. So you say, what is the legitimacy? The legitimacy for them is the success of private business. We live in, hopefully all of us and all the others live in societies, free societies, based on human rights and liberties. And one of these liberties is the economic liberty to create business and do business. And if you're successful, you are not bad people. If Google, I met people of Google, I met people of Facebook as high-level people. They are people like you and me, except they are more successful with their business than we are, okay? Incredibly successful because of the upscaling of their business. So as they do private business and they try to make as much money as they can, as far as they do this legally, in compliance with the law, what is the problem? Now, like in other areas of business, the problem, of course, is then that it might be a dominant position. There is a risk of abuse, etc. And that's where societies have to reply. That's what I mean. If Germany, if Georgia, if Israel tries to work on a response to this challenge of the power of these platforms, it's national action. It's peanuts for these companies. It doesn't change much. So including the Network Durchsetzungsgesetz, the Network Enforcement Act. It's a nice attempt to do something, and it has a big risk. First, it's an attempt which is limited to Germany only. There are fines up to $50 million or euro, which is quite a lot of money, but it's extreme peanuts for Google. If they have 2 billion euro every 3 months of benefit, not of turnover, but benefit through 2 billion, so 50 million. You laugh about that. But they do not like to be punished, of course, because that's bad for the reputation. So this kind of attempts work, but there is a risk, of course. And you all know the risk also, that is, if you allow them to judge now on the content of what you put on Facebook as a message to your friends or not friends, if it's fake news, if it's hate speech, if it's whatever bad things, recipes for constructing bombs, etc. Now, the question, is this criminal? And that's the criteria in Germany for intervention. It's the company, it's Facebook, who has to assess, is this a criminal content under German law? And the next day it must assess if it's criminal under Italian or Georgian or American or Chinese law. You give them incredible power, additional power on what people, individuals are doing on this network, on the nets, on the Facebook net. So is that legitimate? Is this okay? Yeah, so we can argue and discuss. My view is it's a sort of enforced, delegated censorship. And that's not only dangerous for the company. If they are doing wrong, they risk fines. And that's why they will be very restrictive, perhaps, and treat as criminal things which are not criminal at all and which are covered by the freedom of speech, which is a very important democratic fundamental right. And they judge upon this. So we have instituted in Germany this procedure. They have to check if this is criminal or not criminal, if it's evidence of criminal, clearly criminal, then they have to take it down immediately. But what are the rights of those who have put this in the internet and want to communicate certain things? What are their rights? There is no procedure yet for protecting clearly these rights, the freedoms of speech of the users. So I think it's an attempt with at least two big drawbacks or problems. First, it is the censorship question. And second, it's the question of legitimacy to judge upon the content, which is the flip side of the responsibility to avoid that criminal content is promulgated through this network. All this is not new to you, but we have an intense discussion on that in Germany. I cannot talk about, and I do not oversee the recent practice at the judges, at the courts now for the application of the network enforcement law. But it's worth to look at this with a critical eye, and we should not consider that this is a genius invention. And then the second drawback is it is national only. Of course, it gives an example to other states, other countries. And just to point out, the drawback here is Russia was the first, Putin was the first one to say, that's a wonderful idea.
Oh no, that is not a good sign.
It gets me a little bit skeptical if this is the right approach. So, but of course, we have to do something about the content of and the responsibility of the actors. My reply would be, ideally, we would have many networks, competing networks. So it's sort of balanced system, balance of powers, division of powers in a competitive market, but that's not reality. Perhaps we have to create it. Okay.
Right. That's so interesting. I can honestly listen to you all day, and I hope I get a chance to listen to you more. And I know we have a digital constitutionalism group meeting in a couple of days, so that's great. And yeah, I mean, I completely see your point of view. The Network Enforcement Act is limited in application. It's not the entire answer. And also what seems to be more worrying is that many countries are just implementing quite sort of grotesque versions of it. And namely, you know, Brazil, which has, I've spoken to actually Clara Iglesias about this, and, you know, it doesn't look good over there because they've just taken all problems and they just try to deal with all problems in one act without really analyzing the sort of side effects. And the same seems to be the trend in Turkey, which is again not famous for its democracy, so to speak. So it's something to think about, and it's extremely important to share the German example because Germany really leads the way in this. When it comes to regulation, people always mention Network Enforcement Act, and it's important to see that the platforms are not over-regulating either, you know, because that seems to be another side of the problem. So thank you so much. It's been extremely interesting to listen to you speak about these matters, and I'm a bit wary of our time, so I'm gonna move on to our next speaker.
Yes.
The representative, the head of digital diplomacy department at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel, our strategic partner and a very dear friend, Mr. Kuriel Yifta. Thank you so much for joining. And my first question to you would be the following. First of all, could you please tell us a bit more about what your department of digital diplomacy, what does it do?
Sure. First of all, Nina, thank you for having me, and it was really a pleasure listening so far. I've learned a lot. I come from, you know, the day-to-day activity of the digital, less the theoretics, and it's really great to be able to learn. So I'll speak briefly. How long? What is the time frame?
Well, I sort of have a couple of questions for each speaker. For you, I have 3 questions, so maybe like 10-15 minutes, if that's all right.
In total?
Yeah, but if you want to take more time, I'm just wary of your time. I could honestly sit
Sure.
here all day, listen to you. I'm very happy to
Sure.
see you and very happy for you to share your time. It's just I'm wary of your time.
Yeah, it's fine. I understand. So Israel is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is a leader in digital diplomacy, I think. I've been in this job for about 2.5 years, and even in these 2 years, things have changed very much. And just an anecdotal example, if 2 years ago, I wanted to get in touch with the local representative of Facebook in Israel, okay? Right. That would have been not so easy. Many phone calls and emails, and it would have been a challenge. And today, there is a whole department in Facebook in Israel of government relations. And I have not one, but many contacts that sit in Tel Aviv who I can speak to. So this, I think, shows you the change that the tech companies have undergone, and also the change that the internet has undergone, and the world of social media. If 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was still viewed as a place where some kind of utopic reality where we're all gonna exchange information across countries and be really happy. Today, obviously, we see that there's been a change of reputation, and today the tech companies are blamed for undermining democracy, for promoting terror and cyber and many other bad things, and not to speak of robbing us of our time and of our children's time, and using techniques from the world of gambling in order to keep us online and take our information. And so, of course, as the previous speaker said, they are allowed to do it. They are commercial companies, and they are giving us a product that we are happy to use. But we must all the time be aware that our personal best interests are not, what is at the heart of this industry, but making money, of course. And the second thing that I think is very important to be aware is that this world is becoming more and more technologized. When we speak with Twitter about taking down tweets or, looking over problematic content, that on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken, tweets 500 million. So it's obvious that there is not a person or a team of people, large as it may be, that can oversee this apparatus. It is an apparatus that, by and large, is automatic, is algorithmic. And so is the information that we share. Is it reaching the right people? Isn't it reaching? Again, algorithms are controlling. And so then you have to ask yourself, can I succeed organically by putting out information out there, playing by the rules, so to speak? And if the information is good, it will reach the people that it needs to reach and have the effect that it should. And of course, the answer is no, because this world is governed, as we said, by algorithms, by commercial interests, and you have to play this game and understand how it works in order to succeed. So you have to have, for the first time in our ministry, we realize we need to have quite a few data analysts if we want to understand what's going on online. People who have not studied diplomacy and international relations, but have studied mathematics and computer science. And so these things are kind of merging together today, I think. And it's inevitable that this is the direction where we are going, because we are going in this direction, not only on diplomacy and international relations, but in all aspects of our life. So this is just kind of an introduction, and it's something that we are grappling with. It's not like I have answers to all these questions, but it's something that we are on a process. We understand that this is where we need to be. My department is both operational in the sense that we operate the digital platforms of the ministry, both at headquarters and at the missions abroad. And we react to events, we carry out campaigns in accordance with the targets of the ministry. The aim of these campaigns is to exert influence. And if the classic kind of role of a diplomat has always been to get to know the 1,000 most important people in his country in order to, through them, further the interests of his own country. Today, through digital, through the channels that he is operating and his embassy is operating, he can get to know another 50,000 more people in addition to this 1,000. And he's not only giving them information in kind of a one-way channel, but ideally he's building a community. He's listening to these people. They can talk to him. They can then meet offline as well. And so this community is what is the aim of the digital activity as we see it. So as we said, the department is operational, it's also has a training aspect. So it's my job as the head of the department to make sure that the digital ecosystem of the ministry is a healthy one, that people are doing what they should be doing, that they are not posting things that are inappropriate, that we are growing, that we understand how to measure ourselves and how to reach the audiences that we want to reach. But if in the past, the Twitter and the whole digital presence was seen more as a hobby, you know, the diplomat is going about his day, doing the serious diplomatic work, writing cables and reports and meeting people. And on the side, he's also tweeting. Today, we look at it very differently. This is a core activity. And if the diplomat is holding an event and that event, and he has not planned for the digital aspects of that event, what is he going to post? How is he making sure he's reaching the right people? Then he's not done his job properly. So it's definitely seen as something that is much more important than in the past. I think I'll stop here because I can go on again.
Thank you so much. So interesting to hear about your practices, because we also have, we also have equivalent, not quite digital diplomacy, but we have a media regulating body, obviously here in Georgia, which is called Communications Commission, which is actually my day-to-day job. And we have a media literacy department, but it more sort of has an educational function, more so than actually cooperating or having any sort of with social. I mean, it's really difficult to really establish any working links with social media world from Georgia. I mean, I think that would be a fair assessment, because it's a small country. I mean, we are very active on Facebook, but in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't mean that, you know, we contribute a lot to Facebook globally. So it's really hard to establish any sort of working relationship, but actually it is a root cause of many problems, starting from organizing, you know, a lot of anti-governmental demonstrations that could lead to violence, etc., via Facebook, ending from sort of a lot of violations, you know, bullying, fake news, defamation of not just politicians, but everyone. We are faced with a lot of problems, but we don't really know what to do with it, because with a history like Georgia, it's hard to propose any sort of regulation. It would automatically be viewed as censorship. So it's a difficult ground to stand on, especially when you are in the neighborhood of Russia. So another question that I have for you is, I think you may have again touched upon this, but if you want to sort of add quickly, what are the main challenges associated with Israel's digital diplomacy efforts?
Again, I think, as you said, one main challenge is learning to operate in this ecosystem, and making a kind of balance between organic activities and targeted campaigns, and using both the creativity and the human-to-human contact that we want for our diplomats, but also using the computing power and big data and that kind of thing. And these are two kind of contradicting things, but you need to do them both. You know, we open for our diplomats Twitter accounts when they enter the ministry under their name. So it's personal accounts that they use as diplomats. And we believe that people are interested in other people, not in positions, not in an ambassador or a spokesperson, but actually in Iftach Kuriel or other people at my ministry. And we encourage our diplomats to, you know, also post things that interest them on these platforms in order to create connections. So that's on the one hand, you want to be authentic, and that's something that works very well. And on the other hand, you need to see how you play the bigger games, the bigger picture. And I've been pretty negative as I started, so I want to give also a positive kind of angle, because there are many. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't be online. So one of the amazingly positive aspects that we see in our work, for example, is our channels in Arabic and in Persian. These are our most successful channels. I'm just looking at the report for November for this month. So this month, out of all of our channels, all of our languages, we run in 6 languages. the Arabic channels are more than half of the reach. And if I add the Persian, it's going to be more than 2/3 of the monthly reach of all of our channels are Arabic and Persian. And why is that? Because we are talking to people across the Middle East in their own language, young people mostly who are online. And these people often are not trusting their own media, the traditional media in their own countries, or the leadership in those countries. And so they see in Israel, even though some of them are not necessarily supportive of Israel, but they see in the Israeli networks something that is credible, that is giving them information that can help them. And we in these channels show the solutions that Israel has to the region's problems on high tech, on agriculture, on corona, on medicine. And we try to show that Israel actually has a lot of solutions to the problems that they face in their lives. And we make those connections. And that we know is working for sure, because we see that the channels are growing every month exponentially. We see that the reach is very, very high. And so that is something, for example, because Israel does not have diplomatic representation or relations with many of these countries, although, as you know, that is changing now. So we could only ever reach them using digital. And we see that this is a super effective way, and that we are very proud of. So that's a positive aspect, and it's a big challenge, but we are putting a lot of effort into that.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. And that brings me to my final question. There is a lot of debate in academic circles going on about, you know, Mr. Pernis has just discussed sort of all the aspects really of regulation, so to speak, or the risks of it, or the lack of it, at global level. And it's a big thing. It's a big thing that we're witnessing, a constitutional moment, because constitutions as we know it are obviously changing with the erosion of the state sovereignty and sort of a concentration of power at the sort of technological company level. So it's a big debate. I would like to sort of hear more from practical perspective from your side. Apart from digital diplomacy and the projects that you're pursuing, would you say that sort of regulation is also an answer to the problems?
Yeah, I think, as I said, there is a lot more attention today on what is happening. For example, in Israel, we follow very closely the issue of anti-Semitism online. It's very important to lawmakers, to politicians in Israel. And so these companies, TikTok and Facebook and Twitter, were invited to the Israeli parliament to speak. And they were questioned very harshly. It was just a few weeks ago, and the politicians did not have much patience for you know, the answers that were quite vague. And so, I mean, again, I don't think that regulation is the only answer, but I think that first of all, there is training. And I'll give you an example. TikTok now are going to undergo a training on prevention of anti-Semitism by Yad Vashem. Yad Vashem is the Israeli institution for remembrance of the Holocaust.
Oh, right.
So, you know, training the people who are supposed to be the monitors or overseeing these issues is very important. And that we are trying to do when we can. Another thing, we have dialogues with the tech companies. And what we sometimes tell them is that it shouldn't be, black and white. Either you take down a post or it's up, right? Either it's bad or it's good, because life is not like that. But they should have responsibility. So for example, you could, if somebody is putting a post up that is anti-Semitic or is racist or homophobic or whatever, he could get a notice where it's being said to him, look, your post is potentially problematic. We are looking into it. And right now, you cannot send it to a larger group than your close friends, let's say on Facebook. So then you limit his ability to disseminate this harmful information. And maybe at that point, a reasonable person will say, okay, I better look at this again. Maybe I'll take it down. And if he doesn't, maybe it will be taken down or maybe not. It depends on the situation. But again, limiting the dissemination of harmful information definitely should be a key priority. And I think it is a priority of the tech company, especially because today we're not talking about people. We're talking about bots and avatars and algorithmic activity. I don't know the exact number, but I think that certainly more than half, if not more, of the online activity is not being done by people, but by computers that are controlled by state actors or by non-state actors that are, do not have good intentions. So we have to look at it from that perspective as well. And the tech companies are doing a lot to kind of monitor what they call inauthentic behavior that is suspected of being not exactly a person. And so that's, we cannot just say free speech, whatever is online, it's okay, because it's not. So we are looking into these things, both from the technological perspective, both from the regulation, and our lawmakers are looking into it, and also from the direct conversation with the tech companies, which is becoming much closer as they realize that, governments and international organizations are becoming more scrupulous, or would like to have more scrutiny over what they are doing because of the massive power that they have. So this is...
That's really interesting that you've sort of expanded on local concepts, because local context is really important. Some things that matter in Israel maybe matter less in Georgia, maybe matter more in Germany. It's really important to have that local context and involvement. So huge thank you for that. It's been really interesting to listen to the practical side of how things work in that part of the world. And that brings me to my third...
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that brings me to my third speaker, a leading Georgian professor, Mr. Zaza Totniashvili, who will be... Yes, I think Mr. Panis has raised his hand. Is that right?
No, it was just to show my applaudism. And thanks to you for the introduction and the very, very enlightening replies to the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's really good to hear that sort of feedback from such an international sort of leading scholar. So thank you. We're very happy to have speakers of your caliber. So thank you. This brings me to my third speaker, Mr. Zaza Totniashvili. He will really speak about the Georgian perspective on things. And my question is it's a sum up, and I think I'm just gonna say it, and then maybe if he wants to expand. Today in Georgia, as well as globally, disinformation is a hot topic. It's worth considering that Georgia has a difficult geopolitical location. Society is highly polarized. Recent parliamentary elections serve as an evidence of this, results of which are not accepted by the opposition. This creates a risk of parliament with just one party. As a researcher and expert of conflictology and media professor, considering the above-mentioned risks, what is done in Georgia in order to stop disinformation waves, and also how do you see what do you see as the role of Georgian media? Because at the moment we actually have students of the Faculty of Media and Journalism in attendance, so I think it would be important for them and interesting for them to hear what do you see as the role of media in this process, and how should we fight disinformation in this country? Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here on the very interesting roundtable. Thank you to the very interesting speakers. Thank you to organizers of today's roundtable. I think everybody knows that Georgia is in a really very difficult geopolitical situation, and this is I think the cause that we have very polarized society nowadays. And in this information warfare, I think is very important to know exactly what is propaganda, how it works against our society. Information warfare is the broadest sense, is a struggle over the information and communication process. A struggle that began with the advent of human communication and conflict. About propaganda, you know that it is a communication that is used primarily to influence an audience and further an agenda, which may not be objective and maybe presenting facts selectively to encourage a particular synthesis of perception, or using loaded language to produce an emotional rather than a rational response to the information that is presented. I will read now for you some headlines from Russian media, and you will guess that we are in a very terrible situation. And the headlines spread not only through the Georgia, but through the world. You know that our big neighbor have a very high developed propaganda machine, and it works not only against so vulnerable society like Georgia, but we know 2016 American elections that there was a big problem from Russian propaganda too. For example, Americans can create biological weapons. Georgia deliberately infects mosquitoes and sends them to Russia. There are not lines from apocalyptic Hollywood thriller, but examples of Russian media reports about the Richard Lugar Center Nino mentioned about this is a very, very challenging for us how to defend. For public health research, located in Tbilisi, the laboratory is a partnership project, you know, between Georgia and the United States. And this is cause that Russian side is hungry, I can say, about the lab, because development of technologies in our country is some kind of problem for the country, for the state that is going to influence to our society. But the center's activities for some reason worry Russia, which is spreading disinformation and propaganda about the laboratory. For example, everybody knows in September 2018, the whole world was talking about Russia's use of the Novichok nerve agent in the United Kingdom. At the same time, Russia began to talk about the Lugar laboratory as a place where the United States allegedly produced biological weapons for use against the Russian Federation. This is a research-based statement from the Georgian Media Development Fund. If you type Lugar Lab into Google or YouTube search, you will see that most of the frightening news about it is produced by Russian media. To counter this myth, the Lugar laboratory opened its door and showed that was going on inside. More Russian journalists visited the laboratory than Georgians. For example, about this mentioned Pata Imnadze, scientific director at the National Center for Disease Control and Public Health of Georgia. But even regular tours of the laboratory did little to change the Russian media narrative. For example, the Russian news agency Sputnik described the open day at the laboratory in a dismissive and suspicious way. Of course, not a single one of the sensational statements by Russian media about the Lugar laboratory was true. All of them were disproved by health experts, but these statements achieved the desired effect. 20% of Georgians believe that laboratory contributes for the spread of epidemics. This is a big threat. I think that propaganda works, but when we interrupt the working of propaganda, it influenced 20% of population anyway. EU versus disinformation. EU contains nearly 8,000 examples of disinformation, starting from 2015. The European Union launched the website, online portal to counter disinformation from Russia. It is published in different languages. The site has a disinformation database which so far contains nearly 8,000 examples of disinformation starting from 2015. Half of disinformation messages were directed against 6 countries, all former Soviet republics. About Azerbaijan, there is about 31 articles, about Armenia, 80, Moldova, 132, Belarus, 252, Georgia, 345, Ukraine, 3,193, which Russia wanted to keep in this sphere of influence. Many of the examples of disinformation used against these countries are aimed at causing panic, undermining the domestic political situation, intimidating on increasing military tension. Often the messages look simply absurd. Often they are naked lie, or they twist information, but their poor quality doesn't make them less effective. The disinformation market is West. It employs professionals who are constantly looked for new tools and methods of manipulating people. It is possible to sow panic in a few hours using social media. Information spreads so fast that it's almost impossible for people to identify disinformation. In March 2020, the European External Action Service published a special report, COVID-19 Disinformation, with a special chapter dedicated to pro-Kremlin disinformation. In February, March 2020, alone, the EU disinformation database registered over 110 examples of coronavirus disinformation distributed by pro-Russian media. These examples were with the Kremlin's traditional strategy of sowing mistrust and chaos, aggravating crisis situations and public concern. Moreover, misinformation directed at the Russian audience describes the virus as a form of foreign aggression. It claims that coronavirus originated from secret American or Western laboratories. Disinformation for domestic audience focused on conspiracy theory about global elites, which deliberately use the virus as a tool to achieve their goals. Many fake and manipulative news based on shocking conspiracy theories gradually change the perception of information. At first, people simply don't react to disinformation. Then they react to it, but don't believe it. And then, due to the frequency and volume of such materialists, they start to believe fake or misleading narratives. This is the biggest problem in the spreading of disinformation. The first and most important thing is not to become a source of a fake disinformation ourselves. There is a golden rule here. If you suspect it is a fake, don't publish it. This is suggestions from researchers. And finally, I want to share with you a list of rules that will help us not to fall victim to manipulation. Always check several sources of information. These can be the media, social networks, or experts, but several sources are a must. You should not rely on information from little-known websites. Look for the same information on trusted, serious, and professional news websites. Fake news often comes either from newly created social media accounts which are thin or content, or from accounts that are limiting well-known news media but on closer inspection are fake. If you are using of the information. Do not spread it. This will help you avoid becoming a polluter of information flow. Trust yourself. Tune into your common sense. It's difficult to manipulate a thinking person. And finally, is it very important to think that we should work with our students to create critical thinking. This is a basic weapon, I think, against propaganda. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really good to hear the specific examples of the kind of disinformation that we've been experiencing. And because as you mentioned, it's the double struggle. It's the internal and also it's the external disinformation due to geopolitical reasons. And I think you absolutely correctly mentioned that digital, I mean, in this part of the world, the training and digital literacy is probably the answer because we are still not quite ready for regulation. I mean, there is some talk about it, but I mean, again, as soon as you mention that word, you always get sort of debate between freedom of speech and other rights, and no government wants to be accused of censorship. So it's a very, very thin ground for us to walk on at the moment. So digital literacy and training and how to tell the fake news from real news seems to be the answer at this moment in this country. So thank you so much for such an interesting speech. And I believe that we have another sort of a little bit less time than I thought for questions. So who want to sort of answer? I know that a lot of people wanted to ask questions, but probably not everyone will have an opportunity to do so because obviously the time is limited and our speakers are very busy. So first of all, thank you for everyone who's attended, and I know that you guys want to ask questions, but we have to limit the time. So I mean, the floor is yours. Maybe we can take one question per speaker. I think that would be fair. And yeah, I mean, who wants to ask the first question?
I have one question, please.
Who was that? Sorry, Mariam. You? Okay, but speak up because I don't think I can. Mariam is a student at the Tbilisi State University, which is the oldest university of Georgia, and she's the student at the Faculty of Journalism, and she also studies media law as well. So she's a mix between sort of social media law and traditional media. So yeah, please, Mariam.
First of all, thanks to all the speakers for their amazing presentations. It was really a pleasure listening to you. But my question is addressed to Professor Pernis. Dear Professor Pernis, it was very interesting and very informative, your presentation in all, especially for me as a Georgian, because in Georgia, local court is not very well prepared to deal with all human rights issues on social media. So I think sharing your experience will be quite effective and useful for us. Therefore, as for my question, I wonder specifically what roles do you think local courts play in relation to human rights issues of users on social media platforms? What is the main importance of local courts? Thanks.
Well, thank you very much for this challenging question. It's a really good one. Of course, any legal review, judicial review starts at the local courts because you cannot just jump on to the highest courts in any event. Now, let me try to imagine what a case could be to be brought to a local judge regarding the social media. If through, and just my imagination now tells me if through Facebook, in a Facebook group at school, within among pupils at the school, there is a very, let's say, tough mobbing campaign against one or two of the kids at school or the teachers? Is there a way to go to the local court against the social media, against Facebook, which allows this campaign? Of course, the first attempt to defend themselves, the guys who are involved, to defend them against this campaign is to go against the colleague, the other pupils, which are participating in the mobbing campaign. So the social network is outside of this, but that needs, that the condition for this is that you can identify those who are leading the campaign. But if you cannot identify those who are leading the campaign, you may need help from the website. Now it's a question of national law. What is the defense the national law provides as a protection for the rights of the pupils involved against this kind of campaign? Let me talk about German law. We have perhaps in certain cases it's criminal law or it's private law. You can bring a case for what is unterlassen, blocking that the judgment tells the other pupils that should stop this action. Okay, so you can bring this case, but then you need, again, you need the names of those who are doing this mobbing campaign. Under German law, not mobbing, but if it's a criminal, if it's hate speech, which is sort of part of violating criminal law, you would certainly not go to the local courts, but you would bring this case in the procedure under the network enforcement law against the social network. So the local courts would not be involved in this. I must think more about this. It is difficult for me, for the time being, to imagine really cases where you can successfully go to the local court to defend your rights, particularly human rights. At least if, if there is a private person, including an internet platform, which is a private person under the law, who is the other side of your case, you want to defend your rights against this. You cannot simply rely on the list of human rights, because at least under our understanding of human rights bind or have or compel public authorities not to violate them. They are addressed to public authorities. They are not addressed to private people. Private people have to obey the law. The public authorities have to obey human rights, okay? So if the law is brought and enacted, which is violating my human rights, in Germany, I can go to the Constitutional Court and attack the law. But if Facebook establishes a rule that people with blue eyes are banned from the use of Facebook, I would say that's, of course, violating my human rights. But this human right is not binding Facebook. If there is no a national or international or global law, I can rely on a law which protects my rights against Facebook. I have no instrument to defend myself. I can circumvent. I could use provisions of private law. I could use provisions of criminal law and say they are attacking my personality, but I would not have a direct claim on human rights against a private person. So that's the limit of human rights. So let me stop with this, because whatever I say more on this takes your time and is not thought through. So I need more time to think this through. Thank you.
Thank you. That is indeed a big question, the horizontal and the vertical application of human rights, and you know, the private public sort of division. So absolutely, it's a huge question for everyone. And
I have questions.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, absolutely, Victoria. She's a journalist. You're a working journalist, right, Victoria?
Yes, Interpress News.
Right. So it's one of the leading news agencies here. So she has a question. Yes, please.
Professor Zaza, first of all, thank you for your interesting presentations. And what do you think government of Georgia and society in Georgia should fight disinformation in Georgia? Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for so interesting question. I think this is a big and challenging problem, not only for our society, but for the world, but especially for us, because our society is too vulnerable. We see it. The polarized society, this is the result of influence of propaganda and disinformation. What we should do, I think here we are to hear so interesting speakers about legislation, how should work about the disinformation. I think everything should work against propaganda. I think Georgian law should carry about propaganda to how to fight. I think Georgian society in general should work against propaganda. I think Georgian universities, Georgian schools should work. I think we should teach our students how to fight against propaganda. And media literacy is very important. And especially representatives of media should, I think, do the best against propaganda. They should catch propaganda materials, analyze and publish and spread through the society. This is a very complicated problem, and we should be together against this propaganda, especially Russian propaganda, because we know that this is big threat for our society and for our nation interests.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the whole society needs to stand together, and as Mr. Tsatniashvili has said, it needs to become part of the day-to-day regime, you know, and part of the educational system, like it is in Finland, because Finland is obviously one of the leading countries, which is a success story in fighting disinformation. So thank you so much. And just final one question. I believe there is one from one of the attendees. Yeah. Mr.
Yes, please. I would love to ask Mr. Ifta. You know that in Georgia, social media, especially Facebook, is used very actively. So I would love to hear from you how the social media used in Israel in pre-election period. And it was a pleasure to listen to your lectures.
Thank you. Well, I think that during the election, there is a lot of oversight by the election committee. So they are doing oversight to make sure that the use of social media is not being manipulated or being used in a manner that's inappropriate. I think in Israel, the effects of this kind of misinformation is less. And you can write a doctorate about why. It's not a straight answer, but I think in Israel it's a small country, a bit like Georgia, I think. And many people know each other, all the journalists know each other. So it's very easy to point out somebody that is actually fake or inauthentic. So immediately, if you want to do something like that, you will be exposed. So in that sense, I think those incidents that they did happen, they were relatively marginal, and they didn't. People don't think that they affected the results of the elections or affected them, in any significant manner. So absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's been I'm coming up to the end. I think there are more questions and there is a lot of interest, but unfortunately our time is up. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank you because I think it's been an excellent mix of theory and practice. And I think it's been an excellent mix of, different sort of countries with different past, different perspectives, different experiences, and yet so many things in common because of the infrastructure of social media and because of infrastructure of internet. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity that, it is through this Zoom session and through internet that we have an opportunity to connect, because at the end of the day, it is all about connecting people. And, it's a great sort of, it's a great luxury to have a chance to speak to so many different people and, leading professionals in their respective fields through Zoom. And I think my sentiment is shared by the students and the professionals attended by the roundtable today. So once again, thank you so much. And I wish you health, first of all, and safety. And hopefully the next time we meet will be sort of in COVID-free world.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thank you.
It was a great
Thank you so
pleasure.
much.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.